Hello, everybody. This is Constance from Mysterious Galaxy. I am very excited because tonight we are here to celebrate the deadly hours. And we have its four amazing authors with us. So we have, if you guys just want to raise your hand, I think everyone knows what everyone looks like since there's so many of us on screen. We have Susanna Kearsley, C.S. Harris, Anna Lee Hubbard, and Christine Trent in the house. So yay! I am very excited for us to be doing this event. And we also have, you cannot see her, she will be the voice of moderation, but Kirsten will be moderating this event for us tonight.
Hello, everyone.
Here we go. And so, like I said, we're here to celebrate The Deadly Hours, which is a new anthology featuring 4 mystery novellas that follow the trail of a priceless pocket watch from the mid-1700s until the Great War, as it crosses paths with 4 couples who seek to contain its mysterious force. And they'll obviously talk to you more about the book as well as themselves. And I just have 2 more little notes before I hand it off to them. If you look down below, this is the Vanna White portion of the intro, you'll see where it says ask a question. As it would imply, if you click that button, it will pop up a little box, and that is where you can ask questions for our authors. Please feel free to ask questions because it's so much fun to answer them. And also, I'm slightly biased as a bookseller, but I think the best way to celebrate a new book is to buy it. And you can buy this book. There is a buy book and signed book plate button, a little green button down there. And what's really cool about this is that the book plate is actually going to be signed by all 4 authors. And there's this really cool like map that comes with it. When you click the link, there's like an image of it that you'll get to see. Like it's this really cool poster. But I am going to stop rambling and let you go ahead and hear our amazing authors talk. And have a great event, guys. I'll see you at the end.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Kirsten talking. I am a marketing specialist with Poison Pen Press, and I am delighted to be here with Mysterious Galaxy and this event for the Deadly Hours. So I'm going to let the authors introduce themselves. So Susanna, if you want to kick us off.
Hi there, I'm Susanna Kearsley. I'm joining you from up in Canada, actually. I write, for people that aren't familiar with what I write normally dual time novels that have a little bit of everything thrown into them short of the kitchen sink. They're sort of like history, mystery, adventure, romance, everything all jumbled into one. So they're normally modern day characters that are dealing with mysteries that come out of the past. But for this novella, I just stayed entirely in the past and took several couples out of existing books that I have. But I don't write series per se. I just write all standalones. So this is my first novella. And I pass it off to Anna.
My name's Anna Lee Huber, and I write the Lady Darby Mysteries, set in 1830s Scotland, Britain, and I write the Verity Kent Mysteries set in post-World War I Britain. And my novella is actually in the Lady Darby universe. It's the second in the series. It's been a lot of fun. Christine?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I write the Lady of Ashes mystery series, which my novella is set in that universe. I've also got a few other historical fiction novels, and I've written a couple of books in the Florence Nightingale mysteries. So very glad to be here and can't wait to talk to you.
I'm C.S. Harris. I write the Sebastian St. Cyr historical mystery series, which is set in Regency, England. I've also written, I have a lot of names. I've written historical romances under my own name, Candace Proctor, and then I've written a thriller series under C.S. Graham. And although my mystery series is set in the Regency period, my novella in this anthology is set in the Second World War.
Fabulous. Thank you. So I think we can kick this off with a question I'm sure the 4 of you have gotten many times, and that would be, what was the inspiration behind the anthology, and how did it end up being the four of you writing together?
So I had wanted to work on a project with other authors. I'd wanted to work on an anthology, and I was already friends with Christine. So I reached out to her and just kind of bounced the idea off her, and she was all gung-ho about it. And we kind of chatted, and then we let it percolate for a while. And then I came up with the idea, you know, what if there was some sort of object that passed through time and could move between the stories, and what if it was like cursed? And so we just kind of brainstormed about that, and then Christine came up with a great idea about what about a pocket watch, which was perfect. And so then we kind of talked, and then we reached out to some authors, and we reached out to Susannah because I've always wanted to work with Susannah, and she was super excited about the idea. And so we brainstormed and worked on it and came up with the whole idea. And then we had some ups and downs, and then we needed a fourth person for the end, and someone suggested C.S. Harris, and we were all like, yes, perfect. And so Candy jumped in and joined us, and that kind of became our foursome, and we just took it from there.
Wonderful. Very exciting. Anything else to add there?
No, I just think I always say I cannot imagine a different foursome than this. Like I think we fit really, really well together as a team. And it was just watching the way the book came together and watching the way all the stories fit together. We didn't write, we planned together, and we talked about how the stories would fit and stuff, but we just went off our separate ways and wrote, and then brought everything back together. And I was just so thrilled and so amazed at how everything kind of, all worked together as a unit at the end. And I just don't think any other combination of authors would have worked as well. I just am so thrilled. So just happy.
It really, and I emphasize what Susanna said, we didn't actually read each other's stories as we were working on them or review them. It was just, we all did our stories, and then we all read the entire book at the same time. And it was really, for us, gratifying at how well the stories hung together and sort of sounded like they were written in the same voice. And again, we weren't editing each other's work as we went along. It was just simply how it happened, serendipitously.
I think that's great. And that leads right into my next question. And that's, what was the process like writing together? Was it, obviously you wrote the story separately based on what you just said, but what was the process of getting this from conception to a finished book that we have today?
Anna, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think, well, at first it was, we just had this very raw idea, and it was just bouncing ideas off of each other. And Susanna was amazing about spearheading, finding us a pocket watch and breaking it all down so we knew how it worked. And we kind of all worked and collaborated on the design. She came up with the idea about the gold from Cartagena, and that the origins of the curse. And we just all kind of threw in our own little tidbits to add to it. And it just kind of grew from there. It was very organic. We just kind of all threw out ideas and, oh, what about this? I mean, for most authors, you work such in a vacuum. A lot of times you don't get to bounce ideas off other people. And so it was just fun to be able to do that with each other. And it just kind of grew and rolled from there. And Candy was added in a little bit later, but she added her own little twist to it too, and it was perfect. And and we all just adjusted to each other when we needed to. But it was really amazing, like Christine said. Like when we finished it, we didn't have to do a lot of tweaking. We'd ended up doing so much plotting and planning ahead of time, and that it just kind of all fit. It was great.
Anna says, that I was amazing. What she means is obsessive about it. Like I just, we all have a little bit of research obsessiveness that we kind of discovered about each other, is that we love the research part of the book. All of us. I mean, Candy is a research hound too, and you know, like Christine, like we all love that part of the book. So whenever we get our teeth into some aspect of research, then we just kind of go down the rabbit hole with it and we're gone. And you know, for me it was the watch. I like to see what something looks like when I'm writing about it, and I thought, gosh, I've got this responsibility of starting the story off and passing it on to the next person, and everybody has to use this item and we all need to know what it looks like. And the neat thing about that was once we started to look at it and figure out what it actually looked like, everybody added their element into it. It's kind of like, oh, well, this could be on the case, or this could be on the case, or this could be on the, you know, why don't we put this on, or why don't we make the inscription do this, or and it became this real object that we could all see passing through time, and that was really cool. But yeah, I might have spent like a little bit of time you know, investigating that that for me is the fun. You know, I have a little file of photographs and things that I might have sent to them that they were probably rolling their eyes by the end of it. It's kind of like, oh, look what I found, guys, look, you know. And if we pull our money together, we could buy it for like 10,000 pounds. It's really cool. You know, but the, you know, I little bit obsessive about stuff like that, but it's fun, you know, and we all have but the neat thing is too, like as we get writing, you know, we didn't write together, but because we sort of knew what each of us was going to be covering in the story, that for Candy's story, she knew that she wanted to reference back a book that I was mentioning in my story. So she would, you know, kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to leave a space here in my story, and I need to know a quote from the book that I can put in this part of my story. So, you know, I hadn't written that yet. So I'm kind of thinking as I'm writing my story, okay, well, what's a good quote that I can throw to Candy that she can put in the end of, you know, and it was neat how that, you know, because I'm not used to writing like that either. I'm not used to passing a torch to somebody else that they can use in their story. And it was just kind of a fun process, really fun process.
I think it worked because at least I found that my other three fellow authors very easygoing. Nobody had ego on the line. Yeah. Nobody trying to be controlling. Everybody was just having a lot of fun and very enthusiastic about the project. So when it all came together, it was just a joy. It was amazing to see it happen.
Well, and Candy, you were such a good sport, and like you jumped in at the end, and you just went with it. You just went with it and found a way to work it and new characters and everything.
Yeah, because they said, well, since their stories were already plotted out when I came on, they said, well, we have this and we have that, and see if you can work them in. But if you can't, that's okay. And I think I did work everything in.
Oh gosh, you did. Like, you know,
amazing.
Like as she says, we handed her like 35 pages. Like here's our outline. What do you know? But and for anybody that, you know, once you've read that story, there is a tie-in. It's not a Sebastian story, but there is a tie-in to, which I hope Candy will mention to you, that to her Sebastian world. But you know, she's laughing because she knows what I'm going to say. But I'm on this campaign now for her to make this couple, because when I read this novella, I'm like, oh, this needs to be a series now, because I love this couple. It's like, and I got to the end of the novella, it's like, so what's their next adventure? Where are they going now? What are we doing? You know, where are they, you know, and everybody has to join me. You know, once you've read this novella, we have to sort of, you know, convince Candy that this can't be the end for Jude and Rachel, that this has to be their beginning. And this novella can now become, you know, their origin story, and they can go off and have their little beginning as a series, please. Because I think I would miss them terribly if they don't get their own series, please.
I have to admit, I miss them.
They're pretty cool. Yeah.
I think what's been forgotten here too is that although Candy was the last, shall we say, to come to the project, she was the first one done with her story too.
Which totally sucked, you know, just like not that I take that personally, but I was not the first done with my story by a long shot. I took a very, very long time to finish my story. My story was we had a Dropbox. You ask about how it worked, you know, how the procedure worked. We had a Dropbox and we all loaded our stories up into the Dropbox when they were done. So I would be seeing the Dropbox, and it's like, I'm done. Here's mine. Poof. Here's it. And they all finished theirs. I think it was like within 6 months, right? It had to be within 6 months was the longest. And I took 3 years to finish my story. And they were just incredibly patient and so nice. And I don't know how many books they put out in the meantime, but we were all chatting and having a great time. And we kept up the email loop, and everybody was like, being really, really nice. And it was only rarely that somebody would kind of slide by. So how's the novella coming? We do still have the project going, right? We're still doing that thing. But it was, I'm a really slow writer at the best of times, and I was also working on a novel that I had on contract, but everybody's been really patient. And I would so love to do another project with these with this group, because it was so much fun. And I just every time I think of it, I just get I get a nervous tick, because it's like, oh my God, it would take so long to do it. But as I say, they'd have to give me a running start and tell me what the idea is, and then they could go off and write a couple of books and come back and pick me up in 2 years, and I might have my novella done then, and they could do theirs in 6 months, and we'd have a book.
So you've heard it here. We just need a whiz bang idea, and Susanna's in. We've got another anthology coming.
Too funny, and great that you guys were able to be patient and get this all written out and whatnot. That's fantastic. You guys have kind of touched on this, but what did you enjoy most about writing together? You mentioned that sometimes writing is like being in a vacuum. So what was the collaboration like? What was your favorite part?
I really think it was just having other authors who understand, you can talk to about other people, but other authors, you really takes other authors to understand all the idiosyncrasies and everything. I mean, and the way we get so excited about research. I mean, my husband, I probably drive him crazy talking about things. Guess what I read today? Whereas other authors totally get it. Like, we're all in it together. And it was that was just the fun part for me, just having other people to get excited and bounce things off of and just, laugh with. So
I had never met any of the 3 other authors. So it was, and I still have only met in person Anna, although we've been seeing each other virtually now for the last month. But it was fun to connect with other authors in a way that I had never had that experience before doing a project with other people. So that was it was very supportive, and it was very encouraging, and it was a good thing to fall back on when frustrations cropped up.
I'm used to meeting authors at conferences, which is a very different sort of dynamic than being intimate on a project together and getting a story put together. And for me, it was just such a great experience because we agreed on everything. There was never strife or conflict or anything. And I've heard of other collaborative projects that haven't always gone so well for other authors. So this really was a great experience. I just don't know if 4 authors could be put together like this again, who just get along so well and are able to create this entire book in one voice. I can't say enough about it. It was awesome. It was a great experience.
I think, like Candy said, it was very much egos at the door. I mean, I don't know if we have egos to be like, I just think it was a very good combination. I think we're all the same type of people. And, I think it's probably just as well that we're not on physical tour, because we'd probably spend way too much time in the bar, and they'd,
But everyone could come join us.
Yeah, it would be a fun tour, but we're all very similar. We're all very laid back. We're all very receptive to each other's ideas, and we're all very we want to lift each other up, and there were no prima donnas in the group, and it was a very nice experience. It was very, very nice to do. Yeah.
I have to say too, I think whenever you're writing a book, it's a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, to even embark on the project. And so in doing that together, like, it was really a bonding almost, because, you know, it's such a, you know, and writing a book, I mean, for me, I think for all authors, it's emotional. It's, you know, it really pulls something from you. And so to do that with other people, it was just a special experience. So it's a special thing. So.
Yep.
And I found myself connected with everybody else's characters. I mean, not that I hadn't already read the books of all three of my fellow authors, but it was very special to me that, you know, my Violet Harper character picked up the pocket watch from Anna's Lady Darby character. That I don't know, that just created a really special bond. And then I was able to send it off so that Candy's character picked it up. That was just a really special thing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And that actually kind of leads perfectly into my next question, which is, how did each of you decide on the lead characters and the time frame for each of your stories?
So I think initially the idea was to use our existing characters. And so that meant, like, for Christina and I, we had a set time period. And then when we reached out to Susanna, I'm going to let her explain that, but she actually, you know, was prepared for this. It was kind of, you know, kismet.
It was just, you hit me at the right time, and like the right moment. It was right after Desperate Fortune had come out, and I was actually, it was like right after the summer that Desperate Fortune had come out, and I had been on a book tour. And I get nervous landing on planes. Taking off and landing is my only nervous times on planes. I love flying, but I had my headphones on, and I was playing the playlist that I had done for my book. And playlists are these things I make where I as I'm writing, I collect songs that make the characters move. And it's a involved thing that you know, the song will make the character start moving, almost like an MTV music video, and the character moves in my head like a movie, and I just kind of write down what they're doing and saying. And I had a song on that was making Hugh, who was one of the lead characters in A Desperate Fortune, move around, and he was doing this scene that I'd never seen before, and I thought, well, it would have been really convenient if you did that during the writing of the novel, because that would have been a really beautiful scene. He was actually in the cabin of the ship that they had been in for A Desperate Fortune, and it would have been just a lovely scene. But of course, he hadn't done it for the book. And when I landed in Phoenix, I was doing an event at a bookstore there, and Diana Gabaldon was interviewing me. And I do a conference every year that Diana also goes to, so I've known her for about 11 years. And she took me out for dinner, and I was explaining to her how irritated I was that Hugh had done this beautiful scene that I couldn't put in the book now because it was published. And she said, that doesn't sound like something that should have been in the novel. That sounds like a novella. And I said, well, I've never written a novella. How do you write a novella? And she said, you aim for a short story. And I thought, okay, all right. And I just had that sort of like thing going in my head, and the scene kept playing and playing and playing and playing, and literally, you know, 2.5 months later, Anna gets in touch and says, I've got this idea for a project. And the funny thing about it was, she hit me with this idea for a project that involves a pocket watch. It involves a cursed pocket watch. Well, Hugh was apprenticed as a young man to a watchmaker. So it's one of those things where the other little piece of advice that Diana Gabaldon gave me years ago was that when something is right, when you've got the right project, life just puts little things in your path. Life just puts all those little pieces in your path, and you know it's the right thing to write. So I thought, okay, life is just throwing things in my path now. This is the book that I'm supposed to write. This is the project I'm supposed to write. And I didn't realize I was going to be writing it for 3 years, but I thought it was going to be a lovely little palate cleanser between novels, is what I thought it was going to be. But it was just this perfect, serendipitous lining up of things. And I was desperate to write Hugh. Because I was so sad at leaving Hugh and Mary. And of course, when I sat down to write them, then all my other characters were kind of like, hey, here you're writing a novella, is there space for us? And because my characters like to wander into other stuff. So it just became this whole thing. But that's how that came about. It was just the right moment. So no other characters have decided that they're going to be a novella thing right now, but
thus far.
Yeah. Yet.
Well, I ended up not using my series characters because when they came to me, and they needed a fourth, well, since they already had 2 stories set in the 19th century, mine is early 19th century, and they needed somebody to finish the story too. I said, no, I don't need to do Sebastian. I'll come up with an idea that will finish it off. And it just seemed made for World War II. So I did tie the characters in. The Jude Law is distantly sort of related to Sebastian's family. So there is that tie in. But it was fun for me to create completely new characters. And I think it made writing a novella easier because I didn't have a huge backstory so I wasn't tempted to put that in. I could put in exactly what I needed to flesh out my characters and make readers feel like they knew them, but I wasn't tempted to put stuff in there that wasn't needed.
And that is a challenge to me. Writing a novella was, how do you introduce a character, an existing character, to a new audience who have potentially never read about this Victorian undertaker, Violet Harper, yet, keep the story moving along because I've got 25,000 words to write in. So get it introduced, set up the whole atmosphere and the whole world, and yet having the plot completely moving along. And for me, the thing I learned was all the extraneous, or I don't want to say extraneous, but all the side stories and threads and things like that, you really have to eliminate them in order to keep your story clipping along. And for me personally, I had to reduce the body count. I usually have 4 or 5 deaths in one of my mysteries, and I had to really shrink that down as well to fit it within the 25,000 words. If you all want to talk to what that part was like for you.
Writing the novella?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the right, the challenges of doing it.
Yeah, I know that many of you have not written novellas before. Susanna, you've mentioned that a few times now. What is that like, going from writing novels to a novella, and what was the process in cutting that down since you were limited by word count?
Well, for me, I don't even outline. So my normal novels are from 120 to 150,000 words, and I don't outline. And I'm working now within a canvas of 25 to 30 tops, 1,000 words. So yeah, it's tricky, right? It's you have to no subplots. Although I know subplots. It's no subplots. What's that all about? You have to squeak one subplot in, and I did squeak a subplot in. But I guess it for me, it was more a case of, by the end of it, it was kind of like, just let me finish it so I can edit it in so that they don't kill me. I was more looking at the word count and trying to hit word count than anything else. But it it was just it's a completely different animal. Writing short is a completely different animal. And I was never a great short writer anyway, because I'm, as you can tell, I'm talky, right? Like I don't do anything short. I have a lot to say, and the canvas of my books is long, and so trying to condense anything into a short space was not easy for me. But it was fun. It makes you work harder, and especially because I was working with Hugh. And if anybody has ever read A Desperate Fortune, Hugh doesn't talk a lot. Hugh doesn't say much, and so Hugh is curt to begin with. So that kind of helped in the novella because he didn't have a lot to say. So he was a good person to do a novella with.
Yeah, in my situation, it was very similar to Christine because it was an established series and just, you know, introducing them, but not going into so much detail that, you know, there was going to be readers reading it who've never read it and readers who have, and just finding that balance. And, you know, you can't go into it a lot because you've got to get to the story. And, you know, for me, I actually was a little too sparse at first because I was so worried about going too long, and I had to go back in and layer in more description because I'm usually much more verbose about it. So, you know, yeah, it was a learning experience. I'd written one other before, so definitely not a pro, but I think I did the same thing with the other one. So maybe when I do a third one, I'll probably do the same thing.
I'm a plotter, so I always plot my mysteries out ahead of time, and I have a pretty good idea how many scenes it takes. I actually sit down and write out outline scene by scene, so I'm really obsessive. So I know how many scenes it normally takes me to write 100,000 books. So I thought, well, I'll just cut that and flat down by 3/4, and I'll know what I'm doing, right? And I had the same problem as Anna when I got to about page 20, and it wasn't my description that I was shorting, but I felt like it was my characters that I was so conscious of the word count that I wasn't doing a good enough job of making these people really come alive even for me, let alone for the reader. So I stopped, and I decided if I had to go back, I had to make people get interested in the characters, and if that meant that I had to cut some of the plot out as I went along, that's okay. I would just adapt it in the end. And it was I like challenges in writing. I've been doing this for over 20 years, so it's really great for me when I get to try something new. It's why I hop around genres. It's kind of an ADD in a sense, but and also I think it's enriching for me as a writer to try different things. And so this was a challenge.
I like to scare myself. There's an old Earl Stanley Gardner quote that, you know, when something scares you, like, you know, you should wade out and meet it, you know, wade out into the river and meet it, and don't just stand on the riverbank and watch it go by. And I kind of try to do that with myself with every novel. Like I you know, when Anna asked me, I actually, you know, I thought about it because I'm thinking I'd never written a novella, and this is a huge responsibility, because you're not just, if you fail, you're not just taking yourself down, you're taking everybody else down with you, right? And, you know, I walked around for a while and I thought, you know, do I say yes or do I say no? Because, you know, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, it'd be really fun to write a novella. It's another thing to wreck the careers of everybody else that takes you on, you know. And believe me, in the course of that 3 years, I'm thinking, wow, these poor people that have signed on with me, you know, are probably regretting it. But it makes you a better writer when you push yourself, when you challenge yourself, I think. And I try to do that with every new book. Otherwise you get bored, right? Do something, push yourself that little bit. Usually when you're just on the brink and you're thinking, I can't do this, I haven't got the skills to do whatever it is I'm taking on, that's when it's really fun. That's when you're pushing yourself that next level as a craftsperson. And I enjoy that.
I 100% agree with you, Susanna. I'm the same way. I'm like, every book I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? Like, I bit off more more than I could chew. But then when I'm done, I always say to myself, okay, if you're writing a book and it's not a challenge, maybe you need to stop because you're phoning it in at that point, it feels like. So I think you always have to keep challenging yourself.
I think that's great. We do have some audience questions, so I think we'll switch over to that. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add before we jump into those? All right.
Questions.
So the first question that I have for you guys is, now that you've all worked together and you have each experienced the writing of a novella, do you think there's a chance you might try this again?
Like I said, I would love to. I would do it with this particular group. I would do it with them supporting me because I felt like I had the right team at my back. In this instance, I had the right team, and but like I said, they would definitely have to give me, they would have to hit the starter pistol and then just go, yep, just watch her go, and then come back and let me go a couple of laps and then come back and pick me up in a couple of years. There's a chance I may get faster. Maybe that was my, my thing, but I just, they didn't put any pressure on me, and I work really well when there's no pressure on me. So it worked well, but definitely, I would do it again. I think Hugh and Mary particularly lend themselves well to a novella format. They're kind of a neat little, because they move around as a couple. They're pretty mobile.
Yeah, I think I'd do it again. After I started and got into it, I think I did it kind of naively, and I realized it really could have been a disaster if the people involved had been different. I hadn't really considered all the ways it could have gone wrong. It didn't. So, but yeah, I would have to be. I'd probably be more careful next time if I was gonna. I don't know if I'd want to do it with another group, because now that I realize how it could have gone bad but didn't. So I think I would be open to doing it again.
There's actually one character that I could use, but he would be by himself. There wouldn't be a romantic thing, and it would be World War II. But one person I always thought should have a novella.
So then maybe Candy could write the 18th century piece, and we write
we'll flip.
Anna and I will switch off, and
yeah,
it'd be fun to work together again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. All right, so the next question is, what were some of the strange things that you learned in your research? It sounds like all of you are research hounds, so I'm sure this will be a fun one.
Oh my gosh. I write about a Victorian-era undertaker, and for anybody who knows anything about that era and sort of the obsession with mawkish funeral customs, I mean, it's a strange thing every other day, of things that I've researched, just in terms of how they would reuse coffins and all kinds of things like that. There's just nothing about that era that isn't odd. I didn't end up using it in this particular novella, but one of the oddest things I ever came across, and there's so much from the Victorian era, but many readers may know that the Victorians were very obsessed with, they were fearful of being buried alive, and they needed to know that the person was dead. And you've heard all the things about bells being tied to the fingers so they could ring their way out and all these kinds of things. But one of the strangest coffin things I ever saw was a particular kind of coffin where it would sort of sit over the grave, and there'd be a viewing thing to look at the person as they're, to make sure they begin to decompose. And once the cemetery keeper, the guard, the night watchman could see that that person really was gone because of the decomposition, they could turn a crank that would actually flip the person out of that upper coffin and kind of release the bottom of the coffin to drop them into the grave, and then they could turn the crank back around and you could reuse that top coffin again. That is hands down one of the strangest things I ever found in my research. And I have not used it yet in a book, but I really need to because it's so odd.
Practical, though.
Yeah.
Practical. Yep.
Any other strange research? I mean,
Oh, I do all kinds of strange research, but I, I just, for me, it's like piles and piles and piles of research. I don't know if you'd call any of it strange. I mean, I just absorbed, like Trivial Pursuit is no longer a thing, but I mean, I used to be the queen of Trivial Pursuit in the family because I would know all these useless things that nobody needed to know until you played Trivial Pursuit, and then I would know them all, and it was for even something like the novella, you get into travelogues of obscure monks that went to Portofino in 1736 or something like that, and I can walk you through Portofino and where they went and what was there at the time and what they ate, and you use this much of it, but I think the reader can tell if you don't do that research, even if you don't put it in. So I do it anyway because I enjoy it, and I do research into Hugh is an assassin, so I do research into what blades he would be carrying and where they would be in his outfit, and all. And you might see 2 of them, but I know where they all are, and maybe one of these days you'll see all 13 of them, but for now I know where they're all sewn into his coat and stuff. So it do strange things like that. Maybe you just sort of live in fear that you're going to get hit by a bus, and the FBI is going to find out what's on your computer or what's in your bookcases or something, and think that you're very strange, but that's just the writing life.
I don't know that I had anything strange that came up in my research for this book. I mean, I think you always encounter, because when we do so much research, I know way too much about body snatching. I'll tell you that. Just because it comes into play in the Lady Darby series of Set During Burke and Hare and before the Anatomy Act. So I know way more than anybody needs to know about that. But yeah, I can't think of anything particular to this book.
I'm a historian by training. I have a PhD. I used to be a university professor. So I think that there wasn't anything I wasn't aware of when I started researching this novella, but there were details that I had to nail down. And I think that one of the things that I find particularly interesting about the Second World War in England that I don't think you see enough, and that is the land girls. So that at the same time that they were drafting men to go off and fight in the war, they also drafted the women to go into the factories and to go out to the farms and do the farm work that the men were no longer able to do, which isn't something you really think about happening in the 1940s, that those women really did go in and do literally almost everything that the men could no longer do, including being drafted and living in basically barracks working on the farms. It'd be a fun thing to write about someday.
Yep. I think there's a TV series on somewhere on Acorn or something that's called Land Girls. Yeah.
See, I don't watch television, so
It's a very good series.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you guys have gotten lost in many rabbit holes for research.
I'm down them daily.
Yep. That sounds like fun, though.
It actually is, except when you're on deadline and your brain is like, "Ooh, look, a rabbit hole." And you're like, no.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the next question we have is, I love Lady Darby's personality. I know some authors use traits of friends, loved ones, or even people they don't like so much. Is Lady Darby's personality based on a real person or completely made up?
I never base my characters on real people. I just can't. I don't know why. Sometimes I'll steal like little ticks and things that like little idiosyncrasies that people have, or a certain trait, like feature, like their eyes or something. But I never take a person whole cloth, and I've never made a personality from someone. So she's totally made up. So I'm sure she's bits and pieces of people, and even myself a little bit. But yeah, she's made up. So.
What about any of the other characters in your stories? to Christine or Susanna or Candy?
I don't take characters whole cloth either. I mean, I've known some unpleasant people that occasionally I think their personality disorders give me insight into creating some of my less savory characters. So I use them that way, just to understand people better. But I don't, I've never actually, well, especially I would think a main character, you wouldn't want to do that with.
I put, sometimes my minor characters are compilations, like the in the Winter Sea, there's a character named Jimmy Keith, who is a combination of two of my own landlords. He's my character's landlord, and he's the combination of Jimmy McGovern and Ralph Rees, who were my landlords in Eyemouth, Scotland, and in Angle, Wales, when I stayed in Scotland and lived in Wales. And he's got traits of both those men, because I just adored both men. And it was my way of sort of immortalizing both of them. But I'll only do that with nice people. You know, and my sister, whom I lost, and whom I just adored, is very much present in a couple of characters, but you know, just in a couple of them. I know where she is, but not everybody necessarily does. But I will take speech patterns of people more than anything else. Sometimes I'll take little speech habits. Hugh has the speech pattern of somebody that's very close to me, which I, you know, find kind of endearing. But other than that, no, I don't usually lift, because characters will just become themselves anyway. Even if you try to make them look like somebody else, eventually they just become who they want to be anyway, in spite of you.
I don't necessarily base my fictional characters on real people, but I do have an awful lot of fun writing historical people. I have a lot of fun writing about Queen Victoria. I enjoyed writing Prince Albert in previous Lady of Ashes books, and Charles Francis Adams, just all kinds of historical figures. To me, it's very fun to try to put myself into the shoes and the life and the mindset and the emotions of someone who actually lived. And I really enjoy doing that writing. But I've never based any of my fictional characters on a real person. Although my brother has observed to me that Violet Harper's snarkiness is a little bit me coming out for real, but I'll let the reader decide that.
Too funny. All right, so our next question is that I haven't read many anthologies because they're usually disjointed stories that don't appeal much, just from the fact that these 4 novellas have a continuing theme is very intriguing. Is this seen often or at all? They are waiting on their book to arrive, but they really love the idea.
Thank you. I don't know. This was, like I say, this was Anna and Christine's idea. I've always thought of it kind of like the red violin with a pocket watch, you know, where it's one thing continuing through, going down from hand to hand through the generations. And I love that concept of something just being passed down. It intrigued me. The little vignettes, the stories of this one thing going down through time. I don't know if it. The only thing I can think of, there was a movie made with a car back in the 50s or 60s. It was like the yellow. It's completely blanking on it. Somebody out there will know. If you know, put it in the questions. It's like the yellow something. But there was a movie with a car that did that. It went from owner to owner to owner. You know, so there are. There's the red violin and the yellow something. That's the only things I can think of that follow that kind of pattern, you know, where you have this object that goes along and different people own it and hold it, and it and it passes along.
Yeah, I
but,
can't think of any.
novellas that are joined by a place,
Yeah.
rather than an object.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
I've seen the places, but not. I was trying to think of an object too. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Or thematically linked. There are probably ones that are thematically linked. There used to be somebody did a review on Amazon where they mentioned the detecting club that used to exist in Britain, where that Agatha Christie used to be a member, and or used to be the president for years and years. And it was all these very famous. I think it's still going. All these very famous detective novelists, crime novelists, and they would do these what they called round robin novellas and round robin collections of stories and stuff like that where they would somebody would begin a novella or a story and then pass it on to the next person, and it was kind of like, here, I've written a little bit and then I've killed this man and I'm handing it off to you and you get to finish it, and that sort of thing, which is kind of a fun idea too. But I wouldn't subject anybody else to that because it's mean, but so there's that type of thing, which is kind of, I've heard people do that as well, but I don't know that many people do what we just did.
Yeah. It does appear that the yellow Rolls Royce is
Yellow
the
Rolls
movie.
Royce. There we go. See? It was the yellow something and it was a car. That's all I know. It was a fun movie. It was a very fun movie.
A slight tongue twister, too.
See? I have a mind that remembers useless things. That's what I do.
All right. So do any of you read scientific or medical journals from your eras as part of your research?
There weren't too many journals around, but I read books like written by people that were. Yeah.
They're pretty scary. Scary stuff.
Yeah. Some of the advice they give is interesting. Yeah.
And undertaking manuals from the time are not easy to come by, because like today, the methodologies used by undertakers are very closely held secrets. They tend to be family businesses handed down through the generations, and they consider that the way they present a body to be, it's artistic and it's proprietary, and a lot of it's not shared. And so it's actually very hard to find that kind of information online. And I can find some information, and then I have to sort of fill in the gaps with my imagination in certain areas. So,
well, the science of the time period I'm writing is normally the time period I write is late 17th, early 18th to mid 18th century, and the science that was happening then was quite fascinating. I mean, the leaps they were making in science was tremendous leaps, and you can read the research and read the experiments and read the books that were being written. It's fascinating stuff, and what a lot of people don't realize is that Hugh he's an assassin, and one thing that Hugh does carry, I don't think he's got it with him in this novel. I don't think he does, but he does have a rifle. And a lot of people don't realize that, rifles were around quite early. But in Desperate Fortune, he has a rifle, and I have a book. One of the things I've got somewhere back in here is a book, written on rifles that, from the mid 1600s, that gets into, it's a study on why they think rifling makes the bullet go faster. And they didn't quite figure it out perfectly. They were speculating on why they thought it worked better. And their theories weren't quite right, but they at least figured out that if you rifle a barrel, it makes the bullet go straighter and faster. So, we tend to think of rifling as being something that comes from the American Revolutionary period and that sort of thing. And it was around well before that, in German hunting rifles in the 1600s. So that's stuff that I didn't know until I started writing that book. So.
Definitely. So for this anthology, do the novellas need to be read in order, or can they be read out of order?
I think they should be read in order.
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes total sense, especially since the watch is passing through time.
Right, exactly.
All right, and I think we have time for one more question. So, what elements about writing a novella do you like more than writing a novel, and vice versa?
It's faster.
Right. You turn it in much faster, unless you're Susanna.
Is it really faster, Candy? I don't know. I don't know. One thing it did do was it allowed me to focus on a small story in a small period of time with one little group of characters. And sometimes you just have a little story you want to tell. Like, you don't want to use that big canvas. You can't think of a larger story. You don't have enough material to do a larger story with them. But you miss them and you want to journey with them for just this little bit of time. And a novella lets you do that. For me, it was that. It allowed me to spend time with people I really liked. And if I, do another one, it'll be because of that. It'll be because I miss the characters, or I have characters I really love, but I just cannot think of a storyline that would expand large enough for me to write a novel about them. But I don't want to let that group of characters go. So that's what I really enjoyed, was just getting into, and the technical challenge of creating that story within that condensed space without my fellow authors killing me. That was nice. And having other people around, that was nice. I like that too.
I would agree with Susanna. Same thing. That's exactly what I was going to say. And in the converse, for a novel, what I enjoy most is getting to do multiple arcs and storylines kind of all weave together. It's fun to just kind of let myself play. So
for me, I enjoyed the idea that I could create this introduction to my Lady of Ashes world in a quick and easy way, while also my readers could be introduced to these other fabulous authors. That's what I really liked about having a compilation of novellas. But I think my love would always be writing the long form book. I'm not sure I would do a steady diet of novellas. I really do like writing long form.
What about you, Candy?
Candy, I know you said that you liked that they were shorter, but were there any other aspects that you liked or didn't like about them?
My phone blinked just when you asked that.
Sorry.
No, I mean, maybe it is because I'm such an obsessive plotter that it was pretty much a similar experience for me. I write pretty tight. I don't usually let myself meander around. I'm pretty focused on the plot and trying to weave everything, make sure everything weaves into that. So I think for me the nice thing was that it was an opportunity to explore. I mean, especially because I'm the one who had different characters from my series. It was an opportunity for a completely different time period and to create new characters. And I did have, because I am typically a slow writer. It usually takes me about a year to write a book. Sometimes I have a few extra, month or something it just worked out well that this idea came along when I was farther along in my series book than I normally was at that period. So I was able to fit it in, whereas something longer I couldn't have done that with.
How many scenes do you normally have in a long novel, Candy? Like you said you know how many scenes that you normally have, and you just cut that back. How many scenes does it normally take, give or take?
Usually 80 to 100.
Okay.
And I mean, I in my books, range in length from, I go from maybe 95 to 110. So
Okay.
I put however many I feel like it takes to tell the story.
Yeah. Everyone's different. Yeah.
It's about that many scenes.
Yeah.
Cool. And it's cool to get to peek in because every author has such a different approach.
Yeah.
Like it's fascinating that you actually have like a number and know, as opposed to like someone like Susanna, where it's just like right by seat of pants.
No, but there's no wrong way, right? There's absolutely no wrong way. And I, like when I say seat of pants, it's, it's not like, oh, I just sit down. It's like there's a lot of research that goes on the top end of that allows me to do that when the characters go on the page, right? And then and you'll always hit a point where where you stop and you have to kind of do a little like point form for the next chapter. It's kind of like, okay, well, these are the points I want to cover in the next chapter, I think. And then your characters go, no, we don't think we're going to do that. We're going to go over here. And you just kind of let them go. But at the beginning, I just throw them on the page and let them go. But I'm always working.
Just breakdown if I tried to do that.
And I'm just working, but I'm working always at the background and working with a historical timeline that's like maybe, my historical timeline is about 110 pages long. Of all the research facts that I've gathered, and I know what happened when, and I know what real historical characters were in what. Like I know when. Captain Thomas Gordon, when he was sailing out somewhere or coming back or doing what. So I just don't know when my characters are going to decide where they're going to be, where, they might decide to use that scene. They might decide to come and do something that year or not. But if they do, then I know what the weather was like and what was happening. So I can go, aha, you're going to use 1695. That's awesome. I can, I know what was going on then. So, but it's just a different, if anybody out there watching us is a writer, there's no wrong way to do it. You find the way that suits you. And every book might be different. You might do a book that is, where you're a pantser like me. And then you might find that the next story, you can't do it that way. You might have to outline the next story. And that's okay. Everything is different.
The very beautiful thing about art is that everyone gets to approach it in the best way in which to express their stories and what they have to say.
There's no wrong way.
Nope. And unfortunately, though, I am the villain of this event now, for we are at the hour mark, and it is my duty to have to end the event. I am so sorry.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Lovely.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to give a huge thank you to all of you. It was such a pleasure getting to have all four of you to get to celebrate the book, because I feel like that's such a rare thing you don't normally get with a collection of short stories. So I want to thank all of you for joining us, and also all of our amazing readers for your comments and engagements and questions. And because I am a bookseller, I have to end the event on a note saying, click the button down below and buy this awesome book and celebrate these awesome authors. And thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to go ahead and say goodnight to everybody. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.